let's start. There was a town where time hardly stirred, tucked between sleepy cliffs and endless gray seas. It was a place where fog came not just to visit, but to stay. The town had no name, or if it did, no one bothered to remember it. It was simply the town by the sea, where windows stayed shuttered, cats slept across cobbled roads, and wind chimes hung still in the mist. At the very edge of that town, where land finally gave in to the restless ocean, stood an old lighthouse. It hadn't worked in years, maybe decades. Salt had weathered its stones, and vines curled around its base as though trying to pull it back into the earth. Its light had gone dark so long ago that even the oldest fishermen spoke of it only as a forgotten relic, until one evening it glowed. A soft, golden light spilled from its lantern room, not bright enough to warn ships, not loud enough to disturb the waves, but warm, like candlelight inside a storybook. It turned slowly, rhythmically, as if keeping time with a song only it could hear, and beneath the beam, riding the sea breeze, came a sound so faint it could almost be missed. A melody, a lullaby of sorts, made of whispers and strings, as if a piano and violin were dreaming together far away. Few in the town noticed, most were already asleep, but far down the road, a traveler looked up. He'd come from nowhere in particular, a man with a threadbare coat and a satchel filled with books he didn't read. His name was Elias, though he rarely used it. He wandered because he couldn't stay still, and he listened to silence because it was the only thing that didn't lie. Elias had arrived in the town a day earlier, asking for no room and expecting no welcome. He preferred places that didn't ask questions, and the town obliged. But now, standing at the edge of the beach, watching the faint golden spiral turn above the sea, Elias felt something stir. He didn't believe in signs or fate. Still, the sound, it called. The walk to the lighthouse was slow, not because the road was long, but because it felt like the world wanted him to take his time. The fog thickened and thinned with his breath. The waves seemed to hush when he passed, and always that music, gentle, wandering, old. By the time Elias reached the lighthouse, moonlight had silvered the stones. The air smelled of brine and moss, but also something sweeter, like dried flowers pressed between pages of forgotten books. He expected the door to be locked. It wasn't. It creaked open with a sigh. Inside, dust floated like snow in stillness. Wooden steps spiraled upward, worn smooth by the footsteps of someone long gone. Lamps lined the walls, unlit, and at the far end of the small entryway stood a door that led to the keeper's room. Elias stepped through. The room was quiet, sparse, a cot with faded blankets, a cracked teacup on a shelf. A large window framed the sea like a painting, and in the corner, resting against the wall beneath a coat rack, a guitar. Its strings were loose, its body worn. One tuning peg was missing, yet it looked like it had been placed there just moments ago. Elias sat beside it. He hadn't played in years. He wasn't even sure he remembered how. But his fingers moved before he thought, gently, almost with reverence. The first note he strummed was broken, the second, better, and the third. It hummed through the room like a memory. The melody came back slowly, the way fog lifts at dawn, a tune from childhood, or maybe from a dream. He didn't know why he remembered it, or why the lighthouse did too. He played quietly, matching the rhythm of the waves outside. Each chord felt like it turned a gear hidden deep in the walls. The light above spun faster. The golden beam pulsed in time with the music. Then suddenly, softly, the guitar played a note on its own. Elias froze. The note lingered, then faded. He looked around. No one else was there. Only the lighthouse. Only the sea. But the moment had changed. He put the guitar down. The strings hummed once more, like a sigh. Then, silence. The next morning, the town looked the same. Cats still slept on windowsills. Boats rocked idly at the docks, but the lighthouse kept glowing. And Elias stayed. He made the lighthouse his home, or at least a stop along the way. Every night he climbed the narrow stairs to the lantern room and watched the golden light spiral across the fog. He didn't try to understand it. He only listened. The music never stopped, not completely. Sometimes it was distant, like a music box 2 rooms away. Other times it filled the tower, washing over the stones like a tide. Elias tried to write it down once, but the notes changed the moment he touched paper. The melody was meant to float, not to be caught. In the days that followed, he explored the lighthouse. The basement held waterlogged journals and maps of coastlines that no longer matched any world he knew. Behind a false wall in the stairwell, he found a rusted compass that spun even when he stood still. And in the lantern room, under the floorboards, he discovered a music box shaped like a seashell. It didn't play unless he left the room, but when he returned, it would always have moved just a little. Each discovery was quiet, personal, like the lighthouse was letting him in, not all at once, but in little moments of trust. One night, a storm rolled in. The sea roared louder than the music. Rain lashed against the windows. The golden light dimmed, flickered, then steadied. Elias stayed in the keeper's room, listening to the storm's rhythm. He didn't touch the guitar. It sat in the corner, humming faintly in the dark. He watched the sea and thought about things he hadn't faced in years, voices he missed, mistakes he'd buried, a name he almost forgot was his. Then the melody shifted. It came from above, from the lantern room. Different now, brighter, clearer. Like the lighthouse wasn't just remembering, but singing. He climbed the stairs. The lantern was spinning faster, though no wind moved it, and the room smelled like lavender, like the memory of someone kind. On the glass, mist wrote patterns that looked like notes, then faded. Elias stood in the center, arms at his side. He didn't play. He didn't speak. The lighthouse sang, a lullaby without words, a song about stars and waves and the quiet between heartbeats, about things forgotten and things forgiven. And Elias, who had spent so long seeking silence, closed his eyes and let the light carry him. The next morning arrived shyly. The storm had fled, leaving behind a hush so complete, even the gulls seemed to tread softly through the sky. Elias opened the window to let in the scent of sea salt and pine. The golden light still spun from the lantern room, but slower now, gentler, like a heartbeat at rest. He hadn't dreamed that night, or if he had, The dream had melted into the song and scattered with the tide. Still, something had changed. The lighthouse felt more alive. The floorboards creaked not with age, but like someone walking just ahead of him. The walls were warmer. A clock he hadn't noticed before ticked now, its hands moving backward. A kettle he hadn't touched let out steam at exactly noon, though he had no memory of lighting the stove. And the guitar, it had retuned itself. He picked it up that afternoon, sitting on the windowsill of the keeper's room. Sunlight stretched long and golden through the glass, curling around his boots like a cat. He strummed, and the lighthouse answered, not with music, but with memory. Not his memory. The room shimmered. Gone were the peeling paint and dust-laced shadows. The bed was made, the teacup full. A lantern flickered softly on the desk, where a journal lay open. Elias stood, guitar in hand, but the room no longer noticed him. He was seeing the past. A woman stood by the window. Her hair was dark as storm, clouds coiled into a bun. She wore a blue wool coat and boots streaked with salt. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the knobs on a strange, gleaming device. Part radio, part compass, part something else entirely. She hummed the same melody that had first drawn Elias to the tower, low, sweet, wistful. He watched as she turned to the journal and wrote, Night 2:43. The sound is clearer now, not from the sea, but from somewhere behind it. I believe the lighthouse is not a beacon, but a bridge. The room flickered again, and she was gone. Dusk returned. The light dimmed. Elias was alone once more. He looked at the journal on the desk. It was closed again, yellowed and cracked. He opened it. Empty. But as he turned the pages, notes appeared. Scribbles. Songs. Names. May. August. Lumen. None familiar. At the very back was a sketch of the lighthouse, but not as it stood now. It had grown into a tree of light, its spiral a staircase into the sky. Beneath it, waves curled like sleeping whales. He traced the drawing with his thumb, then closed the book. That night, the melody returned. It had changed again, stronger now, harmonized. Two voices twining together, one from the lantern room, the other from deep below, somewhere beneath the stones. Elias followed it downward. The stairs spiraled into a basement he hadn't entered before. The walls were carved from stone and shimmered faintly, as if something inside was trying to remember its shape. In the far corner, behind an old cabinet, was a trapdoor. He hadn't seen it before, but then again, maybe it hadn't been ready to be seen. It opened with no resistance. He stepped into a tunnel of smooth rock. Seawater trickled along the sides, but the floor remained dry. The air smelled not of salt, but of rain on warm earth. And the music was louder now, clearer. He followed it. The tunnel opened into a chamber lit by bioluminescent moss. On the walls danced shadows shaped like hands playing instruments. Flutes, harps, violins. But there were no people, only echoes. In the center stood a pedestal. Resting atop it, a tuning fork made of crystal. Elias reached for it. As his fingers touched the fork, the entire chamber thrummed with sound, not just music, but stories, memories, laughter, sorrow, longing. Visions flickered behind his eyes. A lighthouse keeper standing alone as ships vanished into fog. A boy strumming a guitar for a girl who would never return. A woman building a machine to catch the music of the stars. A traveler, weary, searching not for answers, but for a place to stop and breathe. The music softened, and in that quiet, Elias understood. The lighthouse had always played music, but only for those who were willing to listen without trying to possess it. It was not a place to solve, but to feel, a place for the forgotten to remember, not who they were, but who they still could be. He left the tuning fork where it was. When he climbed back into the lighthouse, dawn was approaching. The golden light still spiraled, but now it hummed in harmony with the sea. Elias made tea, added honey, and sat beside the guitar. He didn't play that morning. Instead, he listened to the waves, to the lighthouse, to the memory of a song too old to have a beginning. And as the sun lifted behind the fog, Elias whispered something he hadn't said in years, not even to himself. "Thank you." The days drifted like mist. Elias stayed, not because he had to, but because the lighthouse asked nothing of him and offered everything in return. Silence without loneliness, light without explanation, music without demand. The town barely noticed. From the cliffs, it only saw the familiar, slow spin of light. Some nights it flickered, some nights it danced. The old folks whispered about the lighthouse again, how it always lit up when something was about to change, but no one walked up the hill. Not yet. Elias began to understand the rhythm of the place. At dawn, the melody curled through the fog like a ribbon, almost playful. At noon, it faded, giving way to stillness. By dusk, it swelled again, rich and slow, like a lullaby for the sea. And at midnight, it whispered, the way dreams do, when you're not sure if you're still asleep. One evening, while sorting through a drawer filled with yellowed maps and shells smoothed by time, Elias found a letter sealed with wax addressed simply, "To the keeper who listens." He paused, then opened it. "If you are reading this, the lighthouse has chosen you, though you may not know why. It does not belong to the world of time, not exactly. It listens to heartbeats, to sighs, to footsteps that pause just before turning back. It remembers every soul that ever stood where you stand. Keep it company. That is all it asks. And when the time comes, you will know what to play. Mem." He folded the letter and set it in the windowsill. Outside, the moon had risen, casting a silver path over the waves. The sea was so still, it looked like glass. And then, for the first time, someone knocked on the lighthouse door. She was soaked from the rain. A small girl, no more than 10, holding the hand of a dog made of shadows. Her coat was patched, her eyes far too old for her age. Elias opened the door wide and stepped aside without a word. The girl smiled faintly, said nothing, and walked in. The dog stayed outside, watching the surf. They shared tea and silence. She did not say where she came from. Elias did not ask. Instead, he brought out the guitar. "I don't remember the whole song," he said. "Only pieces." The girl nodded. "I'll remember the rest." So he strummed. She hummed. And somewhere in the walls, the lighthouse joined in. They played until the fire burned low. not a performance, a memory, a promise. And when she finally drifted to sleep in the old chair near the fire, the shadows receded and the dog was gone. Morning brought clear skies and birdsong. The girl was gone too, but by the door, a seashell rested on the threshold, one that glowed faintly from within. When Elias picked it up and held it to his ear, it whispered a new melody he didn't know yet, but somehow already loved. He didn't try to write it down. The lighthouse still sings, not every night, only when someone needs it. Sometimes it's a traveler wandering up the path without knowing why. Sometimes it's a widow with empty hands. Sometimes it's a child with questions they're too shy to ask aloud. Elias greets them all, offers tea, plays the guitar, listens, because that's what the lighthouse wants. To be heard, to remember, to guide not just ships, but hearts. And if you ever walk along that coast late at night, and the wind carries a tune you don't recognize, but somehow brings tears to your eyes, you'll know the lighthouse is playing music again, and someone is listening.